You have been saying, I'm waiting on God. But what if I told you that He is waiting on you? That frustration in your chest, that restlessness at your job, that this is a low tolerance for misaligned work, that it's not burnout that you're experiencing, it's friction. And this is what happens when your divine design is rubbing against a life that you have outgrown or that you never were supposed to be in to begin with. It's not confusion. This is calling disguised as discomfort. Because the real problem is that you think you're waiting on God to open a door, to show you a sign, to drop a fully blooming garden in your lap like a fully furnished promise. But God is saying, I already moved. I already gave you the seed. I already gave you the assignment. Now I am waiting on you. You see, you're not waiting on opportunity. Opportunity is waiting on alignment. And alignment doesn't start with a strategy, it starts with an identity. It starts with becoming the person who can carry what you have been praying for. You're not being denied, you are being developed. The truth is that most Christians miss is that God does not fund fantasies. Just because you dreamed it doesn't mean that He's obligated to make it come into fruition. He funds faith filled stewardship. You're asking for provision. God gave you a seed. You're asking for visibility. God gave you a voice. You're asking for breakthrough. God gave you a blueprint. If you don't plant it, you can't multiply it. And if you don't move, you can't access it. You think that you're waiting on God, but maybe what you're waiting on is really becoming the kind of person who could survive and thrive under the weight of what you are asking for. You see, the door is already open. And by the end of this message, by the end of this video, you're going to see what's on the other side of your obedience, why it's been feeling harder lately, and why that's confirmation and not a curse, and how to walk through the door that is already open, but waiting for you. Because heaven already moved, the room is ready, and you're not behind. You are in transition. And we're going to get you in alignment with the assignment so that abundance can activate and you can start on your mission today. Let's get into it. And if you want more content that helps you to be the version of you that God created you to be and access abundance inside and outside of finances in every area of life, make sure that you subscribe and like the video for more content like this. So, the first thing that you have to understand is that the gift is already in your hands. So, I'm going to tell you a story, and this is going to change the way that you see where you are and what you have right now. You see, in 2 Kings 4, verses 1 through 7, a widow approaches the prophet Elisha, and overwhelmed and afraid, she comes to him. And her husband, a man who served the Lord, had died, and now creditors were coming to take her 2 sons as slaves in order to settle the debt. She is desperate. She is broken. She is completely convinced that she has nothing left. And maybe you feel like that right now too. But when Elisha asks her a question, it changed everything. And this is a question that I want you to consider too. Elisha said, "What do you have in your house?" She replied, "Nothing except a small jar of oil." The "except" just reveals how little and how small and insignificant she thought that it was. But Elisha didn't dismiss it. He builds what we view as a miracle around it. He tells her to gather as many empty jars as she can from her neighbors. And we'll talk about a conversation later on communication and collaboration, but y'all not ready for that one yet. It says, then behind the closed doors, she begins pouring her tiny bit of oil. And it doesn't stop until every jar is full. She sells the oil, pays her debts, and has enough left to live on. Why does this matter? What does this have to do with you? It's because she thought she had nothing, but God had already given her everything she needed. It just didn't look like the answer she thought would. And the provision didn't come from the outside, it came from multiplying what she already had in her house. What she thought was insignificant became the vehicle for overflow. She was desperate for provision, just like you might be desperate for wanting to understand your calling or wanting to do what you think God has put, but you're waiting for God to give you a sign or the next move. And you think you have nothing the way that she thought she had nothing. But the man of God didn't point to her bank account, he pointed to her inventory. And what she thought was insignificant was her overflow. You see, you've been asking God for provision when He gave you a seed. You've been looking for something new when God is saying, what are you doing with what I already gave you? because the kingdom doesn't work by replacement, it works by multiplication. You don't need more, you need to move. You see, the truth that a lot of people don't want to realize is that wealth, favor, and influence are not miracles and that they get dropped into your lap. They are multiplications of what you steward. This means that your increase doesn't start when you get a new opportunity. It starts when you honor the old one differently. How dare we come to God asking for a promotion when we haven't been faithful in our current positions? This means your promotion itself doesn't come from hustle, it comes from alignment with what is already in your hand. God's not asking you to perform, He's asking you to plant. And your seed might not look like your dream, but it contains your destiny. Now, there are three layers that you can search for what you already have in your house. One are your gifts. This is what you do that comes naturally to you, things that others admire, that you feel lit up about at times, but sometimes it's not even that. Things that people ask advice for you in, things that have come naturally. You also have your grief, which is something a lot of people don't think about, problems that you've had in your life, things that the Lord has brought you through that you were able to overcome, things that the pain and the story that you have been able to live through and carry by the grace of God. And Second Corinthians hits on this where it says like that we are able to comfort those in affliction because God has comforted us in our own affliction. You see, our affliction isn't even always for ourselves. It enables us to help other people who are then walking that path. And then we have the gold. And those are our opportunities, our connections, our resources, things that are in our house, just like the widow's oil that we are undervaluing. You see, the enemy wants you to think that these are unrelated, but together they are your God given seed bank. And you're standing in the middle of your assignment soil. Where you are right now, you are not by accident. But you have to understand that your gift isn't your paycheck, it's your planting tool. Stop asking, when will this finally pay me? And start asking, where do I need to plant this next? What do I need to water? And what does watering look like in this season? Because your reward isn't in what you are holding on to, it's in what you're willing to release. When you finally surrender your grip on how it's supposed to look, you will realize that the raw material for your next level was never missing. It was just buried under your own assumptions. You're not waiting for the opportunity is waiting for your obedience. So ask yourself, what do I have in my house? What skill, what story, what spark am I overlooking because it feels too small or insignificant because somebody told me that it was unrealistic or that it would never work or that I'm just not the type of person who's able to do something like that? Because the kingdom isn't powered by size, it's powered by stewardship. And God doesn't multiply what you admire, He multiplies what you move with. Now, if you are ready to stop asking for more and start multiplying what's in your hands, then I have a training that explains exactly how I was able to go from broke and living in my mother's house to becoming a millionaire by the age of 25 years old with the three secrets to making money on autopilot without hustling, budgeting, or willpower. And this is all about money multiplication. And so, if you're ready to start playing offense instead of defense, then this is the training for you and it's free in the description below. Now, one of the biggest roadblocks that people have to moving in their assignment is a lie that we have been sold in pretty packaging, wrapped in Pinterest posts and Christian cliches. And it sounds like this: wait until you're led. God will give you the passion. When it's right, it'll feel easy. And let me lovingly tell you the truth that you're not stuck because you lack passion. You're stuck because you're waiting for permission. You don't need passion. You need curiosity and covenant level consistency. We keep expecting a lightning bolt, but heaven operates on a lampstand model. What does that mean? It's one obedient step at a time. Faithfulness in the small and stewardship over the small flames, the small embers before they're ever fanned into flames. People think if it's from God, then it'll just flow. And yes, eventually that is often the case, but first, it'll stretch you. David was anointed king and then he went back to the field. Paul had a revelation and then he went to the desert. Jesus was the word, but still trained for 30 years before preaching for 3. You see, calling is holy, not necessarily convenient. And favor does not excuse you from framework. You see, the real rule book is this: is that just because you're a Christian, it doesn't mean that you get to skip the process. It means that you're held to it more tightly, that you're called to a higher standard within that same process. Why? Because you represent the king. Heaven doesn't anoint shortcuts, heaven blesses stewardship. You don't get to bypass the system just because you feel called. You don't get to ignore structure and expect supernatural results. God gave you a gift, but He also gave you a manual for how to use that gift. And if you're not willing to study the rule book, then you forfeit the reward. You see, discipline is the doorway to overflow. And overflow isn't found in inspiration, it's found in iteration. You're not behind, you are just untrained. And passion doesn't birth wealth, process does. There are plenty of passionate, broke people who will never be walking in abundance and who will never be accurately walking in the fullness of what their assignment can bring them. You see, this is where we address that alignment doesn't always necessarily feel good. Sometimes following your spark feels like silence. Sometimes it feels like discomfort. Sometimes it feels like obeying before you feel anything at all. But the deeper truth is that emotion is a great follower, but a terrible leader. And that obedience is what unlocks identity, not just emotion. And I want to make sure you understand something about this thing when it comes to passion is what is a much better guide is not your passion but your curiosity. If you can tap into that and ask yourself, what are my interests? What are things that even just slightly that just I wonder about and that I'm curious about? That oftentimes if you tug the thread of curiosity, then it'll lead you eventually to something as you grow in it that you will grow to become more passionate about. Because again, our feelings are great followers. They follow our actions, they follow our decisions. And so when we decide to pursue something and we allow ourselves to get enveloped and to see the beauty and the awe in all of the things that God has created and the gifts that He has given us, then oftentimes those feelings will follow. But if you feel like, I don't know what God wants me to do because I'm not passionate about anything, I encourage you to shed that weight of feeling like you have to be all in gung ho on something in terms of your passion has to be through the roof and just ask yourself, am I curious about it? And allow yourself to go down that path and to trust that the Lord is going to bring you where He would have you to be. You have to remember that passivity is not faithfulness and that fear masquerading as wisdom is still disobedience. You see, the man in the parable of the talents, he didn't fail because he wasn't gifted, he failed because he didn't move. So you're not waiting on God. You're waiting to work the gift that He already planted you. You're praying for God to bless what you haven't even built. You're asking for more when you haven't even multiplied the little. And He won't finish what you are still refusing to start. And this is the heart of transformation, this next part, which is the process of refining. How do you go from raw talent to mastery? And something that a lot of people don't acknowledge when we're in the conversation of what it really looks like to live and work in your assignment is that the hidden delay is development. And this is the real reason why you probably feel stuck because many people are praying for the room to open, but they haven't become the person who can even survive, not to mention thrive what's inside the room. This is why lottery winners are often literally like brought to their demise with their win because they never became the type of person who could hold the type of money. That's why 80% of athletes end up going bankrupt after retiring because even though they had that amount of money and sometimes even for years, they still never became the person and didn't adjust their wealth thermostat to meet the type of income that they were actually bringing in. And that's one of the other things that I really go into depth in that training. So if you're interested, it's in the description. But what you have to understand is that you're not waiting on opportunity, you're waiting on refinement because God doesn't bless performance, He blesses preparation. Your gift isn't magic, it is material for mastery. The presence of the gift doesn't mean that you're ready. It just means that you're responsible. I'm going to say that again. The presence of the gift doesn't mean that you're ready. It means that you are responsible. Your gift is your assignment. Because you are given something doesn't mean that all the doors are going to open just by nature of you having that thing. Just because you can sing well doesn't mean that it's automatically going to put you at the top of the Christian charts. Just because you have a voice and you're able to speak well, or just because you can write and you have a gift for writing, doesn't mean that there's not going to be any development in between the time that you get that seed and that it becomes a fruit bearing tree. Okay. Because raw talent is heaven's invitation to discipline. And if you skip the fire, then you will fail under the favor. Again, why those lottery winners go back down because they immediately got this thing that they were not ready for. And instead of the fire being something that primed them, it became something that consumed them. You see, before David stepped into the spotlight, he trained in obscurity. He wasn't waiting for the stage, he was mastering the stone. He wasn't chilling with the sheep. Okay, he was practicing precision. The sling wasn't luck. It was muscle memory that was forged in faithfulness. Don't ask God for a Goliath level favor when you haven't even been picking up and practicing your sling. You see, Joseph didn't wing his way into the palace. Joseph didn't get promoted simply because he had dreams. He got promoted because he could run a system in secret. He stewarded the prison like it was a palace. He served behind bars like he had already been given his position. If you want visibility, you have to understand God is watching how you handle invisibility. Refinement is not punishment, it's proof of potential. So, what happens without refinement? If you want to skip that part, right? And we just want to jump straight into the big leagues from 1 to 20. If you skip the work, your gift will take you somewhere that your character can't sustain, which is why a lot of people, again, who seem like these overnight successes who jump into stardom and get way too big without having the proper growth along the way, it is to their detriment. You better thank God that He did not allow you to go into the rooms that you were praying for because He knew that they would have consumed you because he knew that had you been able to access the places you were praying to be without being the person who should have been there, that that would have been the end of you. And some of y'all have some testimonies about situations and opportunities that you got in that you probably were being disobedient, that you were going somewhere you had no business being, that the Lord delivered you from and saved you from, but you got some scars coming out of there. And I pray that you put it in the comments so other people can learn from them, that we can learn from the testimony that God has in each of our lives. And you will show up in rooms that you were never trained to thrive in. And instead of rising, you will retreat because you were recognized but unready. And fame without formation, it leads to collapse, not capacity. You see, you're not being delayed. You're being developed. And this is what I call the capacity curve. You see, God won't overflow where you haven't built the structure to sustain it. And if you haven't built the internal discipline, you can't receive the external abundance. Stewardship isn't always sexy. It is the scaffolding, though, that is necessary for success. So, what does this mean for you? You have to stop waiting for God to anoint your next season and start preparing like He already has. Stop asking for more when you have not multiplied what you have got, because the spotlight isn't the goal, the formation is. Your future doesn't require a new gift, it requires a refined version of you. Show up like the room is already open because the door responds to readiness, not just revelation. Because once you start preparing like it's already yours, you will realize that the room you've been trying to get into, it isn't locked. It's been waiting for your arrival the entire time. And so what happens when you actually start walking in that? This is what this next section is about. It's that the room will make space. This is about divine alignment and access, okay? You don't have to force the room, you form it. You form for it. So you don't have to engineer it. It's that you move toward it. You're out here trying to build doors with your bare hands, but God already built the room, just waiting for your arrival. But you have been trying to get through with the wrong key, which is why it has felt like it has been locked because you've been trying to do it with your hustle instead of shifting your identity into being the type of person who naturally gets the results that you have been praying for. You see, the door isn't closed, you just didn't knock. You thought that the silence meant denial, but the silence was the sign of preparation, not of punishment. Heaven did not ghost you. It was getting you ready for the room. So, what's happening in that delay when you feel like you're waiting on God? You're not being ignored. You're not being punished. You are being aligned because God doesn't just make space, He makes space for who you are becoming, not who you want to be or who you're pretending to be. You see, when you finally move with your gift, you will realize that the room wasn't closed. It was just waiting for you to become the kind of person who could walk in it without breaking down. It is God's kindness and God's mercy that you feel that you are waiting for Him and on Him because it simply means that you are still in the process of growing into that person. And you wanted the door to open before you were steady, but the doors opened with that inner foundation, and the doors that open without it end up in sabotage. God is not being stingy. He is strategic. What does the Bible say? It says literally, if a father, a human father, could give good gifts to his child, how much better are the gifts that the Lord gives us? What would God give us a stone for when we ask for bread? He is a good father. So if you're asking for something and the answer is not yet, you have to trust that that is for a reason and ask yourself, am I watering what I've planted or have I even planted the seed that I have been given? Abundance doesn't come from proving your worth, it comes from activating your assignment. The door is not accessed by begging, it's unlocked by alignment. And we don't force the room through striving. We are invited in when we steward it. And can I tell you something good? The room isn't reserved for the loudest. It's prepared for the most aligned. And so you may see other people to left and right, which don't look. Keep the blinders up. Don't look, okay? But understand that just because they are louder or they appear to be doing something faster, again, many people have received what appears to be blessings, which became burdens for them because they could not carry them. All right. You see, the room won't drag you in it, though. It's not a rescue, it's an invitation. God has already moved. Now it is your turn. The room is ready. The door is open, but heaven responds to movement, to action, not just belief. If your gift has been pulling at your spirit, if your peace no longer fits your old path, if your discomfort feels like misalignment, it's because your access is being activated. You are not waiting on God. He has already moved. The question is, will you? Now, the last thing that I want to address is what keeps people from moving then? Well, there are a few things, but I want to focus on some that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about. And these are things that I've experienced on my own journey as well. So I know them very intimately. And one of those things, when we think that we're waiting on God, I want to ask you something and I want you to really sit with it and be honest. What if you're actually waiting on permission from people who God never told you to ask? That's not a delay from heaven. That's emotional hostage talking disguised as faithfulness. If we can be honest, if we can call a spade, you're not paralyzed because you don't know what to do. You're paralyzed because you know exactly what to do. And you're afraid that it'll cost you approval. That's bondage. You see, loyalty to your past is not loyalty to your assignment. Just because you've always been that version of you doesn't mean that you have to stay them. Just because they were in your history doesn't mean that they belong in your destiny. You see, because there are two sides to that. There's a side where we are seeking approval from people. And even if you don't say it out loud, which sometimes we do, sometimes we make the mistake of telling a big dream to a small minded person and they don't get it. And that can really discourage and dampen our spirits. Other times it's mental where we think about would other people approve or what would they say or that fear of visibility and not wanting to be seen and worried about, what other people are going to perceive us and how they will perceive us and things like that. But a part of it that people really don't talk about as much is ourselves and allowing ourselves to be someone different, to do things that are different, and to allow for people to not come with us. And that can be so scary when you have friendships and people that you love in your life and a church that you've gone to that you've enjoyed and that has really edified you, but maybe it's time to move on to something else. Or you have been in a relationship and now you realize that it's actually really not aligned and it's time to walk away from that or a friendship. And you have to understand that that goes back to a root of not trusting God. That truly it is that I don't want to give up this friendship because I don't trust that God will bring me a better friend who's going to suit me more and be able to walk alongside me equally yoked in the journey and the calling that he has put on my life. And that is what is at the root of it, and that we have to allow ourselves to become someone different than who we were. It's okay that you're not the same. We're not supposed to be the same. I hope to see a different version of you every year who is wiser and smarter and more trusting in the Lord and sees the goodness and his majesty with more awe and wonder than ever before every single year. I pray that that continues to extrapolate. You should start your life as a seed but end as a garden, as an orchard, something that is continually producing fruit. But that's going to look different. If you've ever had a garden or even just know what plants look like at each stage, they look different. And you got to stop holding yourself accountable to who you used to be. You have to start allowing yourself to be malleable, to be something that transforms and changes. And when somebody says, "Hey, you changed," you say, "Yeah, I have. I have." And this is the hard thing is that like it's like shoes and you love this pair of shoes and it's not that there's even necessarily anything wrong with the shoe, but it just doesn't fit you anymore or it's just not your style anymore. And it's okay to let it go. This is the permission if you needed it. It's okay not to have other people's approval. It's okay to even let go of things that you once thought were true beliefs that you once had. You once thought you needed to go get a doctorate degree and become da 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 da. And now the Lord is telling you to go a different way. And you are even struggling with your own approval of yourself. It's okay to let it go. And if this video enabled you to let something go, please put it in the comments. I want to know and I want to celebrate with you as you can remove that baggage to go where you need to be. You see, on certain hiking trails, there are these small little crevices to get in. And in order to go, you have to take something off. You can't bring that baggage. And the hard thing about it is that baggage helped you get to that point. That's why it feels so paradoxical. That's why you feel kind of like, is this really what the Lord needs me to do? Because this baggage had the stuff in it to help me to get to this point, and now you're telling me I need to take it off to go where I need to go? Yes. Yes. Because the version of you that got you here is not the same person that's going to get you to that next place, to that next level. What helps you to be a good fry cook is not the same skills that you need to be a good manager when you get that promotion. You have to be willing to shed that old identity of the fry cook in order to step into the identity of that manager. And so you can thank yourself. You can thank what God built in you in your past self and say, thank you. I had to thank the version of me that would stay up till 5 in the morning and get stuff done and who was working with urgency and, all of this stuff. And I was going at it. And then at some point I had to say, thank you, but I don't need you anymore. You helped me get out of some really bad and hard situations, and you worked with urgency because it really was that serious. Everything really was on the line, but now we are in abundance, we are in overflow, and you're okay. And you don't need to be that person anymore. And you can't be if you want to get different results than what you have now, if you want to go to that next place. And so I know that this little trail off wasn't for no one. I know that somebody needed to hear this. And so remember that just because this was your history doesn't mean that it's your destiny. And you can honor your history. You can thank the people who helped you get where you are while still being okay with the fact that it's time for you to go somewhere else now. Okay. You have to know this. And this gave me so much peace in my season that walking ahead, I'm getting emotional because this is so personal to me, guys, because that's why I wrote this. This is what I get to share. I get to share literally the things that the Lord is doing in my life with you in prayer that it will actually touch someone. And you see, walking ahead is not walking away. You are walking toward what God is waiting to give you. But this is the catch. You don't just leave comfort behind. You leave behind the version of yourself that was comfortable there. You will grieve that version, but please understand you're not betraying her. You are burying what was never meant to go where you're going. And so that approval addiction, you got to break it. It's not fear of failure, it's fear of disconnection. You're afraid that saying yes to God will look like saying no to them. You're afraid of being misunderstood, of being labeled as too much or too ambitious or changing. Oh my gosh. You guys, I get it. I am literally here, but this is what you have to understand is God is not obligated to preserve the opinions of people who don't carry your assignment. He is not negotiating with your critics. He is not campaigning for your cheerleaders. He is waiting for your yes, not their consensus. Your next level of abundance is going to offend someone who is still surviving on scraps. Your overflow is going to disrupt people who have made peace with their lack. Do not shrink your harvest in order to protect someone else's famine mindset. Obedience will always feel like rebellion to someone who prefers you to be smaller. And this is exactly what happens if you didn't see the video, The Princess Diaries, the biblical lessons from Princess Diaries. If you've never even seen the movie, I promise you will be edified watching that video. Please go give it a look because you have to understand what is going to happen on your journey from being who you are to who you were born to be. And that is exactly what I go through in that video. It's meaty and it's in depth and it tells you everything you need to know so you can prepare for the journey that God is taking you on. You see, you were not called to stay where you are to be understood. You were called to go where you will be unleashed. You see, some people were assigned to your season, but not to your story. And if their comfort requires your confinement, then it's time to choose calling over consensus. Obedience doesn't come with everyone's approval, just God's appointment. And that is all that you need. So don't trade your promised land for having more company in the wilderness. God isn't waiting for you to convince the crowd. He's waiting for your commitment. You're not leaving people behind. You're simply refusing to leave yourself behind any longer. So even if it's a solo yes, say yes. Because what's waiting on the other side is so much greater than the applause of people that you are afraid to lose. So, how do we activate from assignment to glory? Well, you are not waiting on God. Remember, He is waiting on you. He placed the gift in you. He opened the door. He prepared the room. And now He's waiting for you to walk in with obedience and stewardship. Your gift is your assignment. Your assignment is your access, and your access is for His glory. So move today like the room is already prepared because it is. All right. Everything is in place. The people assigned for your gift are waiting and they are ready. But are you? So if this message stirred you, it's not random. It's your soul recognizing that God is waiting on you and calling you to step forward. And so if you want to continue this journey, subscribe, give this video a like, and if you're ready to activate that gift and align it with real world increase, you can join me in watching that training that I mentioned below that is going to go over the things that you need to understand, the 3 steps to making money multiply on autopilot. And if this awakens something deeper and you feel like there's a flame that's flickering inside of you that says that you were made for more than you're at right now, more than just to be productive or worry about a strategy or just goals that you never seem to actually be able to complete, please look at my newsletter below. And it is Once Upon the Impossible. And this is exactly where I talk about the methods that literally allowed me, by the grace of God, to reignite my spark, to be and live in alignment with my purpose. And it's not through anything that you've ever heard anyone talk about before. I guarantee. I have read so many books on success, on development, on personal, and like none of them actually talked about these secret lost arts that I explained inside of the newsletter. So if you're interested in learning how to do that and unlock this level of you that you've never seen before, then I will see you there. So if this video blessed you, please let me know in the comments, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one.